In the small, peaceful town of Duncan, British Columbia, a man named Granger Taylor vanished without a single clue left behind. He was 32 years old, not running from any known troubles or dangers. In fact, before he left, he wrote a note. But this wasn't a note about escaping the world or avoiding problems. Instead, it described something extraordinary, a journey, not by sea, not by air, but to a place far beyond Earth. That very night, a violent storm swept across the area, shaking the town with thunder and heavy rain. By morning, Granger was gone. No sign of him, no trail to follow, no answers. What happened next would become one of Canada's most unsettling unsolved cases, a mystery that continues to haunt those who hear it. Welcome back, where true events take a terrifying turn. If chilling unsolved cases and real-life mysteries fascinate you, stick around. Now, let's dive into the case of a man who may have left our world behind, literally. Who was Granger Taylor? Granger Ormond Taylor came into the world in 1948 on Vancouver Island. Tragedy struck early. His father drowned in a nearby lake when Granger was still young. From that point on, he seemed different. Reserved, intensely intelligent, and deeply curious about how things worked. He left school in the 8th grade, but amazed everyone with his mechanical talent, easily fixing things that most adults couldn't handle. By his mid-teens, Granger was restoring all kinds of machines, cars, tractors, even an old steam locomotive he dragged from the forest. He eventually rebuilt a World War II fighter plane on his own and sold it for tens of thousands of dollars. To the people of Duncan, he was either a local genius or something beyond explanation. Granger lived quietly on his family's 21-acre farm near Duncan, often working alone. He wasn't motivated by money or praise. What truly captivated him was the inner workings of machines, and eventually, what might lie beyond Earth. After watching Star Wars in 1977, something shifted. What began as curiosity about outer space quickly grew into a full-blown obsession. He devoured books and articles about UFO sightings, alien abductions, and theories of interstellar travel. He began to tell those close to him that he was receiving messages, not through letters or calls, but telepathic signals from beings in another galaxy. Fueled by this belief, Granger began to build something extraordinary in his own backyard, a life-size spaceship. It was made from 2 satellite dishes bolted together and fitted with a small stove, a bed, and a radio. He would spend long hours sitting inside it, thinking, reflecting, and even sleeping there. For him, it wasn't just a project. It was preparation. When Granger spoke about extraterrestrial life, he didn't sound like someone lost in a fantasy. He spoke with the calm confidence of a man getting ready to leave, like he was waiting for a departure date he already knew. His conversations with friends became more focused. He talked about voyages and space travel with an intensity that made some uneasy. But those closest to him didn't laugh. They listened, because Granger had always been the kind of person who saw possibilities where others saw limits. And if he said he was going somewhere, maybe he was. On the evening of November 29, 1980, a massive storm hit Vancouver Island. Winds howled, trees swayed, and heavy rain soaked the earth. It was in the middle of this chaotic night that Granger Taylor quietly walked out of his home and was never seen again. He didn't bring luggage. He didn't alert anyone. No hugs, no goodbyes. Just a single note taped to the door of his bedroom. It read, "Dear Mother and Father, I have gone away to walk aboard an alien spaceship. As recurring dreams assured a 42-month interstellar voyage to explore the vast universe, then return. I am leaving behind all my possessions to you, as I will no longer require the use of any. Please use the instructions in my will as a guide to help. Love, Granger." There were a few unusual details. In the months before his disappearance, Granger had quietly altered his will. changing the word death to departure, and removing any mention of a funeral. His actions weren't careless, they seemed planned. Even stranger, on the back of the note was a hand-drawn map. It pointed toward a location not far from the family farm, a remote area known as Waterloo Mountain. What it meant, or why he drew it, has never been fully understood. Later that night, around 6:30 p.m., Granger was spotted at a local diner called Bob's Grill. It would be the last confirmed sighting of him. Not long after, neighbors reported hearing a loud, mysterious boom echo from the woods near Mount Prevost. When morning came, Granger's pink 1972 Datsun pickup truck was missing, along with him. No one knew where he had gone, or if he was ever coming back. The disappearance of Granger Taylor quickly became a local mystery. As the days turned into weeks, then into months, there were no sightings, no phone calls, no clues, nothing. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, began an official search, but came up empty. No vehicle, no body, not even tire tracks. It was as though Granger and his pickup truck had been erased from existence. And people couldn't stop asking, how could a grown man and an entire vehicle vanish without anyone noticing? The wilderness around Mount Prevost was vast, but even so, it was hard to believe there wouldn't be a single trace. Many in the town were torn. Some believed the answer was simple. He had gone off into the forest to end his life. Others were certain something else had happened, something stranger. Theories began to circulate. Had he staged his disappearance? Had he truly boarded an alien spacecraft, just as he had written? The loud explosion heard that night only deepened the mystery. If it was connected, what caused it? Granger had always been a careful, intelligent man. He wasn't reckless, and he wasn't the type to act on impulse. And while he was known to use dynamite for clearing stumps on the family's property, those who knew him insisted he would never have handled explosives carelessly. The search eventually slowed. Without new evidence, authorities had little choice but to wait and hope something, anything, would surface. And for 6 long years, nothing did. 6 years after Granger vanished without a trace, an unexpected breakthrough surfaced. In March 1986, a forestry crew working near Mount Prevost, just a few miles from the Taylor family home, made a grim discovery deep in the woods. Hidden beneath moss, fallen branches, and layers of forest debris, they found fragments of a destroyed vehicle. Though its paint had long faded, investigators were able to retrieve the vehicle identification number, and it matched Granger's 1972 pink Datsun pickup truck. Scattered among the wreckage were torn pieces of clothing and small bone fragments. One shred of fabric was later confirmed by Granger's mother to be from a shirt she had sewn for him years earlier. It was the first physical evidence that Granger might not have simply disappeared, but died. The coroner's report concluded that the likely cause of death was massive trauma due to detonation. The site showed signs of a powerful explosion, strong enough to rip the vehicle apart and scatter debris across the surrounding area. Authorities declared Granger Taylor deceased, but the news didn't sit right with everyone. Granger was no stranger to dynamite. He had used it safely on the family farm for years to remove stumps and clear land. Friends described him as extremely careful, almost overly cautious when working with explosives. One even said flatly, Granger didn't make mistakes like that. To some, this meant only one thing. If the explosion was real, it had to be intentional. But others weren't convinced even of that. Was the blast a genuine accident, or part of something more elaborate? Despite the coroner's official ruling, many close to Granger refused to believe the explosion site told the full story. Skeptics began to question whether the wreckage had truly belonged to him, or if it had been staged. Some pointed to Granger's history with explosives and insisted he was too precise to cause an accidental detonation. If the blast had been intentional, they reasoned, it would have required not only planning, but a motive. And that didn't add up for most who knew him. He never spoke of despair. He didn't seem suicidal. On the contrary, he appeared excited, even hopeful, about what was to come. There were even whispers that the blast might have been a cover, that someone else placed the truck there to fake a suicide. Or, in the most mysterious version of the tale, that Granger himself orchestrated it all to vanish without a trace. The people who knew him best, especially a close friend named Robert Keller, held on to one belief. Granger was serious about aliens. He had told them, calmly and with certainty, that he had been receiving messages from beings far away. He said they were coming, and he told multiple friends, clearly and directly, that he would be leaving soon. Whether taken literally or metaphorically, the message was always the same. His time here was limited. So what really happened in those woods? Had Granger taken his life in a hidden act of despair? Had he vanished on purpose, leaving behind a false trail? Or had something truly unexplainable occurred on that stormy night? Even with new evidence, the mystery only deepened. Granger Taylor was formally declared deceased in 1986, following the discovery of the blast site near Mount Prevost. But even with official documents stating the case was closed, the questions never stopped. The most widely accepted explanation was the one authorities gave, that Granger had taken his own life using dynamite in a remote part of the forest. He had access to the explosives, knew how to use them, and the wreckage matched both his truck's VIN and parts of his clothing. It was the simplest explanation, and to some, the only one that made logical sense. But even that version had holes. The coroner's report admitted the evidence was circumstantial. No full skeleton was ever recovered. Only fragments remained. And at the time, there was no DNA testing available to confirm without doubt that the remains belonged to Granger. Even more troubling for some was the lack of a clear reason. Why would a man who had written about an interstellar voyage, who had built his own spaceship, who had spoken so openly about leaving, choose to end his life in such a violent and destructive way? It didn't match the Granger people remembered. He wasn't withdrawn or bitter. If anything, he had seemed purposeful in his final weeks, like someone working toward a mission. The note, the map, the modified will, none of it hinted at suicide. Instead, it read like a man heading somewhere, not running from life, but toward something beyond it. The official story may have offered a kind of closure, but for those who knew him, and those who've studied the case, it felt far from complete. Another possible explanation gained traction over the years, that Granger Taylor's death was not a suicide, but an accident. Some believed he might have been experimenting with dynamite, perhaps as part of a ritual or during a psychological episode, and something went wrong. During the summer leading up to his disappearance, people close to him noticed unusual behavior. Some claimed Granger had been using LSD with some frequency. If true, this could have altered his perception of reality, especially when combined with his growing obsession with aliens and space travel. Supporters of this theory suggested he may have truly believed he was being contacted by extraterrestrials, and that he was preparing for what he thought would be a real journey, physically or spiritually. The explosion, in this view, might have been part of that process, meant as a signal or portal rather than a means to die. Still, many of his friends pushed back against this idea. Robert Keller, perhaps his closest confidant, maintained that Granger was too methodical, too cautious to mishandle explosives. He believed that Granger was in control of his actions, not under the influence of delusion or hallucination. There's also the fact that Granger had made long-term plans. He revised his will. He gave instructions. He left behind a map and note that suggested intention, not chaos. For those who knew him, the idea of an accidental explosion just didn't add up. They believed he was preparing, not for death, but for departure. One of the most persistent and debated ideas is that Granger Taylor didn't die at all, but instead carefully staged his disappearance. According to this theory, the explosion was meant to be a smokescreen, giving him the perfect opportunity to vanish. Granger had spoken openly about disappearing long before that fateful night. He once told someone, "If I ever wanted to disappear, I'd grow a beard and leave the country. No one would ever find me." That wasn't just idle talk. It was a statement from someone who may have considered every detail of how to vanish without a trace. Supporters of this theory argue that Granger was brilliant enough to pull it off. He had the mechanical knowledge, the planning skills, and the patience to design an elaborate escape. Perhaps he destroyed another vehicle and left misleading evidence behind. Maybe the explosion was controlled, enough to fool investigators, but not fatal. Others speculated he fled to another country, starting a new life under a new identity. They point to the fact that no full remains were ever confirmed, and that DNA testing didn't exist at the time. If anyone could disappear completely, they believed, it was Granger. But even that theory raises haunting questions. Why would a man who loved his family simply vanish without warning? Why would he leave behind such a cryptic note and an unfinished spaceship in his backyard? What would drive someone so deeply intelligent to give up everything without explanation? Unless, of course, he didn't see it as giving up at all, but as moving forward to something greater. Today, more than 4 decades after Granger Taylor disappeared, his story still captivates and confounds. News articles, documentaries, online forums, and conversations all keep the mystery alive. Most experts lean toward a realistic explanation. Granger, a mechanical prodigy but socially isolated, suffered a mental breakdown before vanishing. Reports suggest he was using LSD frequently and had become obsessed with alien contact. The leading theory is that he chose to end his life, but cloaked it in a story of an interstellar journey, a narrative that made more sense to him than his reality. It's a logical explanation, yet something about it feels incomplete. He left a detailed will, a heartfelt note, a map leading to an unexplained destination, a handmade spaceship. He said goodbye without saying goodbye. His family never held a funeral, and his friends never got closure. His childhood home's back door remained unlocked for years, just in case he returned. Because even when all signs point to an ending, sometimes it doesn't feel finished. What about you? What do you think happened to Granger Taylor? I'll be reading your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining us today, and if you found this story compelling, subscribing helps me continue to share chilling real-life mysteries. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.